Okay, so how to convince your customer to buy. Now, you might think that the way I've written that there's some dirty tricks going to be involved in this talk, but actually, it's nothing like that at all. I don't believe in doing that sort of thing. Convince sounds a little bit like connive or con people. I don't. It's just not the right way to go about things, in my belief. I think if you do that, you might be successful once or twice, but overall, you're not going to be. So this is about how do you work in the long term to persuade your customer that this is the route that they need to go down. And there's three main elements to it. First of all, your customer needs to trust you. People generally don't buy off people that they don't trust. They need to understand that they're going to be better off as a result of buying your product. And then lastly, they need to understand why they need to buy your product rather than someone else's. There is no doubt in almost all circumstances, there is competition for what it is that you offer, whether it's close or more expensive or vastly more expensive or whatever. There is almost always competition, and you have to be aware of how you stack up against that competition in order to ensure that your customer buys from you. Okay, so just for those of you who don't know me that well, I run Hulock Consulting, and we help sales professionals to improve their performance through training and coaching so that they can win more deals and generate more revenue. My background is 33 years of experience in industry, 25 years experience in sales and sales management, and 6 years now running my company, so that doing this sort of thing for people. Okay, so as I say, there's three main elements to what we're going to talk about. I'm going to start with building trust. I generally think it's the first thing that you have to do with any customer. You have to get to know them. They have to get to know you. They have to believe that you can help them. If they look at your product, do they know that it works? Can they be honest? Can they be certain that it's going to do what you claim it's going to do? It's actually sometimes very difficult to demonstrate that it's going to do that. They only have your word for it. And certainly if there's a fairly long sales process and a number of steps along the way that involve cost and such like, they have to believe you. And that means they have to trust you. And if they don't do that, then the chances are things aren't going to go as well as you would like. So Rachel Botsman is a sort of leading expert on trust. Funnily enough, after the conversation that we just had, she works at the Oxford School of Business and has written various books about trust. And she says that trust is based on four elements: reliability, competence, empathy, and integrity. And I think we needed to be thinking about all of these things whenever we're dealing with our customers. So reliability is a person's consistency in doing what they said they would do and continually doing it, right? So just doing it once is not enough. It's just if you say you're going to do something for somebody, you ensure that you go and do it. And then that person then feels that they can depend on you, right? So that if someone said they're going to do it, they know that that's what's going to happen. Okay. Competence, right? So competence is our ability to do something successfully or efficiently. Now, our customer is not going to care how competent we are at, for example, taking penalties in a football match, right? Because that's not important to what it is that we're trying to do. We need to be competent at doing the things that are important. So again, if we do something, is it obvious that we've been able to do that and do it well, right? Can we demonstrate that we can actually do these things? And part of that comes down to knowing your product, I think. So you shouldn't be expected to know absolutely everything about your products, but you should be able to talk about it in pretty good detail and know a lot of the basic questions that people are going to ask. If you're going to try and sell something to somebody, you need to understand what it does and how it does it. Now, as I say, as products get far more technical, You may need to involve other people who've got greater technical knowledge than you as a salesperson, but you do need to know a decent proportion of that information. And obviously, the longer that you work with the product, the more you get to know those things. Okay, so empathy then. So empathy is our ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So as Roosevelt said, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So that means when we meet with people, we understand how they're feeling and we reflect that back to them. So if they turn around and say, oh, my dog's just died, then we're going to be feeling sorry for them. Or if something exciting in their life has happened, we want to be excited with them. If we take the complete opposite perspective, right, we're not going to be perceived as being that great, because it's going to in fact impact the relationship that we have with that person. And then integrity is about being honest and having strong moral principles, having the right intentions and motives, and doing the right thing for the right reasons. So I had a boss once who he would always say, if you're going to do something, be confident that you'd be quite happy to see it on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow. If you're not happy seeing it displayed like that, then you're probably not doing the right thing. And again, in sales, doing the right thing with people is absolutely critical in order to earn their respect and their trust. Okay, so a lot of these things are established almost immediately when we meet them, when we meet people, right? So we very quickly build an impression of people, and we do it very quickly, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always right, but we very quickly decide whether we can trust somebody and whether we can respect them. Now, in business, we tend to think that actually that respect is the more important thing, but actually that tends to come second. It's the trust thing that comes first. So if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, right, we as cave people, right, if we're sitting in our cave with some meat, right, and a stranger walks in, we want to know whether they're going to be able to, whether they're going to kill us and steal all our possessions, or not, right? That's far more important than can they light a fire in order to cook this meat, right? Because there's no point cooking it if we're already dead, or they've taken it and gone elsewhere, right? So there's that trust is the first thing that comes, right? So that very first thing. So when people are meeting with you, right, trust is going to be there. And if you think about the things that we've talked about, right, competence is difficult to display straight away. But empathy absolutely can be displayed straight away. And the others tend to come over time. You display your competence over time, you display your reliability over time and your integrity over time. But empathizing with people is something that we can do straight away. And immediately that forms a good impression with people. So when we are doing things with our customer, we need to be constantly thinking, am I doing the right things in order to build trust, right? So that's saying what you're going to do and then doing what you say, right? So if you commit to doing something for your customer, you do it. Or if some reason you're not going to be able to do it, tell them that you're not going to be able to do it, right? So that's constant communication. Thinking about it all the time, right? It takes a long time to build really deep trust, but the minute you do something that goes against that, you can lose it very quickly. And therefore, those longer term relationships are far more important than short term success, right? Customers that you nurture and build and grow with, right, will be far more, will stick with you for a lot longer. You can go after short term profits, but ultimately they will dry up. And it's those longer term deals that will be more important, which is why, customer loyalty is far more important than short term commissions. Be honest is probably should be up at the top. It probably is the most important thing. It's one of the things, it's just a backbone to all sales. People get a bad reputation in sales because they're not. In the UK, we joke about used car salespeople who did years ago would do all sorts of dodgy tricks in order to persuade people to buy cars. I don't think it happens quite so much anymore, but it still tars people, salespeople, with that brush of a lack of honesty. And again, it will get found out. And if you don't be honest, then you will lose in the long term. So show people you care about them. We've talked about that, so that's, when you turn up to meet people, know something about them, right? If it's the first time you've ever met them, right, try and look them up on LinkedIn, see what it is that is important to them, and talk to them about it, right? So that they know what it is. As I always, do the right thing. And then if you have made a mistake, admit it, right? There's nothing worse than trying to cover up a mistake. When I worked as a project manager for a while, the client that I was working for said, I don't mind if you're not going to fail, if you're going to fail to deliver, but make sure you tell me as soon as you know, because then we can do something about it. All right. So it's the same sort of thing. If you are going to fail, if you haven't done the right thing, then admitting it, again, demonstrates that to an extent you are reliable. Obviously, you failed to do the thing that you said you would do, but if you've got a good reason or whatever, then you can save the situation as a result. Okay. Any questions from anyone about trust? No. Okay. I will move on. Okay. So articulating value, right? So value obviously is ultimately what it is that we're buying, right? Value is determined not by those who set the price. Value is determined by those who choose to pay it, right? So let's just go through a little exercise to try and demonstrate that ultimately price doesn't matter when we're selling something. I know as salespeople, we always tend to worry about the price and what we're asking for. But at the end of the day, price doesn't matter, okay? So I'm going to show you 2 pens, and I'm going to give you a feature of each of them, and I'm going to ask you which one you would like to buy, okay? And we'll go through a whole series of features, and at some point, hopefully, you will change your mind as to what pen you're going to buy, okay? So first one, all right? So the pen on the left costs £1. The pen on the right costs £100. Oops. Who's going to buy the one on the right? Anyone?
No.
Okay. So I didn't realize there was timing on this, right? So the next one, right? The pen on the right, the ink will only run out in 6 years. The pen on the left will run out in 6 weeks. Who's buying the pen on the right? Anyone?
No.
No. Okay. So when the ink does run out with the pen on the right, you get a free refill, whereas you can't buy a refill for the pen on the left. Anyone buying the pen on the right yet?
Yes. It's getting more interesting.
Yeah, so we're getting a few more features, okay? So if you lose the pen on the right, then you'll get another one for free. Whereas if you lose the pen on the left, you've lost it, it's gone, it's never coming back. Anyone buying the pen on the right? Still costs £100 compared to the £1 one on the left.
Yes, the right.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I don't have to go all the way through, right? So the pen on the right is made of titanium and it's never going to break. And the pen on the left is going to, if you break it, it's broken. Anyone else switching to the pen on the right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, excellent. And then the last one is the pen on the right will get you to the front of any queue you're ever standing in, whereas the pen on the left is just a pen.
Sold. I'll have 4.
Okay, so is there anyone not buying the pen on the right yet? No. Okay, good. So hopefully that demonstrates, right, that at the end of the day, the price didn't matter because ultimately you got so many features and benefits out of the pen on the right that you were able to justify that cost, right? quite frankly, getting to the front of any queue, I think we'd all pay a lot more than £100 for that, right? But that's ultimately what happens, right? So the price doesn't matter. It's how much value you think you're getting out of what it is that you're buying that makes the difference. Okay, so feature then is a distinctive characteristic of a good or service that sets it apart from similar items. So, for example, we had the pen was made of titanium. You got free refills. They were all features of what it is that we were offering, right? The benefit is the advantage or profit gained from something, a statement of how things will be better as a result of the feature provided. So, for example, getting to the front of the queue saves us time, right? Think of how many times we've stood in a queue and been frustrated that we've waited so long in order to get to it. So the benefit is the time that we've saved, right? And then value is the quantification of that result, of that benefit, right? The more you can express it in monetary terms, the better, right? But it can still be a value if it's just in a quantify. So, for example, it could be, that if you get to the front of every queue, it's going to save you at least on average, let's say it's going to save you 15 minutes for every queue you ever stand in. So if you stand in one queue a week, it saves you 15 minutes every week. So that's the value of that benefit. Okay. And customers buy value, not features and functions. So whereas in sales, we have a tendency to talk about features and functions because that's what we understand. It's how do we translate that into what it means for the customer and the value that they get, that it's ultimately what they would buy. Okay. So, for example, why would a farmer buy a tractor, right? So imagine, you could have a horse that pulls a plow perfectly fine. It plows 1 acre in an hour, right? If you buy a tractor, you can plow an acre in 10 minutes. So it stands to reason that you would want a tractor, right? And that's perfectly logical. If you've got a very big farm and you've got lots and lots of acres that you need to plow, the tractor is going to save you an awful lot of time. But actually, if you've only got a couple of acres, then the horse might be just as efficient because the horse you can use for lots of other reasons. And as a result, it might be cheaper overall than buying the tractor. And therefore, for the farmer who's only got a small area to plow, the tractor may not be the best solution for them. Equally, they may not be able to afford a tractor. Horses is obviously a lot cheaper than a tractor, right? So whether, who sees the value and whether they actually see the value will always depend on the customer and the circumstances that they see, right? And that's why it's so important to understand who the customer is and what's important to them before we ever actually try to position a solution for them, because we have to understand whether they are a farmer with a small area or a farmer with a large area before we try to sell them a tractor. Okay. Now, solar panels is another interesting one. So in the UK, there are 3 ways that you can save money from solar panels. So you can save money by the fact that you power all your electrical appliances straight from the solar panels. If you're not using as much as you're generating, then the excess can go into the grid, which you get paid for. But also you can direct the excess via your hot water tank to heat up the hot water instead of using your boiler in order to heat up the hot water. So there's 3 distinct ways that you can save money from your solar panels. And when someone comes to sell them to you, they have to use your estimates for how much electricity you use, how much electricity is going to be generated by the solar panels, and they will actually have to do a calculation for you to demonstrate how much money you're going to save as a result of using the solar panels, and therefore how long it's going to take for you to cover the cost of buying the panels in order to, before you're starting to have saved money overall. Because obviously that's a capital expenditure to buy the solar panels. and it takes time to earn that money back. But it's a legal requirement that they have to demonstrate the value to you before you agree to actually sign up and buy them. Because obviously, if your usage is particularly high, it may take a long time for you to get the value back. If you only put a small array on your roof, then again, it may take a long time for you to get that money back, and that you may decide at the end of the day that that's not the most efficient use of that money. Given the price of electricity right now, they are paying themselves off very quickly, has to be said. Any questions about any of that, about the difference between features, benefits, and value, and the calculation of it?
I suppose one comment from me, Tim, would be that obviously the customer has to have the capacity to purchase as well. You're talking about the horse and the tractor example,
Yes.
and that if a tractor could be ruled out because they just simply haven't got the means to buy it, right?
Yes, absolutely. So that, again, that's understanding that value, and it's the same with the solar panels. It's like, how quickly are you going to get that money back, right? So if you've got the money today, what's the best use of it? Is it investing it in the panels, which will pay you back over 5-10 years or whatever, or whatever? So you need to understand those things. So yes, it is somewhat always related to price in some respects, but at the end of the day, once you understand what that value is, if it's significantly higher than the price, then it's generally an easy thing to say, as long as you have the cash to be able to do it. It's very true. Okay. So a value proposition then, which is something that I think is really important, a really pithy short value proposition is a really important thing for everyone to have, right? So it's a simple statement that summarizes why a customer should choose your product. So it communicates the clearest benefit that the customers will receive, and hopefully speaks to the customer's challenge and makes the case for your company as the problem solver. So it tells the customer who it is that you're helping, how you do it, and why it's important to them. Okay. So a simple value proposition should be really easy to understand, should communicate the benefits to the customer and explain how you're different if you can, right? It can be sometimes the difference, and we'll talk about it in a minute, is quite difficult to do in a short sentence. But if you can, that's great. And it should also be easy to understand in as short a time as possible. So it should be really straightforward, right? And probably the most simple one is in this format. So we help what type of customer to do what, right? By doing what is that we do, right? So we help is possibly the most important start to any sentence in sales, because we're putting it in the perspective of the customer, right? So we start by talking about the customer rather than talking about what we do. And by starting with the customer, it makes it a very different statement from if you said, we do this for these types of companies, right? So we help what type of company to do what activity they do better, and what is it that we do in order to deliver that, right? So just some examples, right? I help marketing teams to resonate with their target audiences by communicating with clarity and compassion. So that's what I can't think of the name of the type of person. A person who writes stuff for a copywriter might say, right? I help marketing teams to connect with their audiences by writing really easily. Okay. A local coffee shop might write, we help our local customers to feel good and do good by fueling them up with artisanal coffee in a community-focused space, right? So that's obviously a very, not your general Costa coffee or your Starbucks. It's a, very different sort of type of coffee shop, right? But by providing both the coffee, it makes them feel good, and do good, obviously, by having the coffee inside them. All right. If you ever read anything that I say, Hulock Consulting helps sales professionals to improve their performance through training and coaching so they can win more deals and generate more revenue. So again, Hulock Consulting, there's a help in there. They all start with a help. Who is it that we help and how do we do that, right? And so what does it mean for them? Okay. Any questions or comments about any of that? Okay, so it is, I think, the most useful sentence to have, right? So when anyone asks you, it's not quite an elevator pitch, but it's very similar to one. It sort of basically says to you, or if someone asks you, what is it that you do, right? It's much better to answer with I help or we help rather than actually saying what you do. Because again, you're putting it in the perspective of the other person rather than your own perspective. And then that means an awful lot more to those people. Okay, so having explained why, so I've built the trust with people and then explained why your product is valuable to them, right? We have to also explain why you're unique, right? As I say, there is undoubtedly competition out there, and your customer has got to understand why they would choose you rather than someone else, right? So if you think about mobile phones, right, there's a whole variety of different manufacturers, and these were the market share that these manufacturers had a few years ago in the UK, okay? So obviously you can see Apple had a huge market share, Samsung was the next biggest one. Essentially, all those phones do the same thing. They all make calls, they send texts, they allow you to send emails, they allow you to browse the internet, and yet we all choose different ones. And every time I do this with an audience in person, I get everybody to tell me what phone they've got and why they bought it. And undoubtedly, everybody will have bought their phones for a different reason. So maybe it's, Apple being compatible with all their other devices. Maybe it's the camera that's on the phone, or maybe it was a particular deal that was on offer at the time, or whatever. There's always different reasons why we've picked what we've picked, right? And if we don't understand what's mattering to the customer and why they would pick a particular one, then we're still going to struggle to persuade them to buy our product, right? So if we understand that the camera is the most important thing to them, then we need to be making sure that we're offering them the product with the best camera, and some of the other things that we talk about might not be so important to them, right? But it's really, we cannot do that unless we truly understand that. But it is, in terms of persuading the customer and convincing them to buy from us, right? We have to appeal to the thing that matters to them the most. Okay, so I tend to talk about it like this. So we've got this circle which describes what the customer wants. There's the circle that what it is that you offer, which in general is different. And then there's what the competition offers, right? So the area in the middle is common to you both, right? So it's very difficult for you to differentiate yourself in there. What makes the difference is the area in yellow, which is what the intersection of what the customer wants with what you offer and what the competition doesn't, right? So it's a very small part of everything that you offer, right? So there are, any product that you have may have 100 different features. Not all 100 are going to make the difference, right? It might only be 3 or 4 that makes the difference and makes the customer choose you, right? But they're the ones that you need to understand, because otherwise the customer can't see a difference between you. And if they can't see a difference between you, then they're going to end up looking at the price. And then that's not a great place to be for anybody. Okay. So why are you unique, right? So think about what makes things unique. So if there's only one example of them, so the Mona Lisa obviously is a unique painting. There's only one of them. You know, having no like or equal, unparalleled, incomparable. So Diego Maradona, you know, obviously a fantastic footballer, completely unlike anybody else in many respects, right? Limited in occurrence. So kangaroos, obviously, you only get them in Australia. Limited to a single outcome or result. So an equation, for example, you know, certainly a single equation will only have one result. A quadratic equation will have two possible solutions or whatever, but essentially it's a limited number, or something that's typical or unusual. So that's snow in June. Certainly in the UK, snow in June would be unusual. Probably isn't in Antarctica, but certainly in the UK. So understanding why you're unique is really important. Right, now this is a picture that I found on the internet, and it's describing a college of further education. So this is somewhere that people will go possibly when they're 17, 18 in order to learn more, right? And if you look at all these banners, right, they're all describing, you know, a variety of features that they've got, right? So, you know, they've got a learning resource center, they've got a dairy parlor, they've got a 3G sports pitch. They offer a whole variety of, you know, degrees, foundation honors to master's degrees, right? And then here, this one is sort of like some of the benefits possibly of why you might want to go there. So they've got outstanding success rates. So, okay, so that's good. They get, most people who go there get to pass, right? Excellent progression opportunities, fantastic location and campus. So again, that's fairly unique. You know, where they exist, absolutely, they're the only people who can exist in that location. And then they say passion for learning and skills. Now, can you imagine a college or a school that doesn't have a passion for learning and skills, right? If it did, it couldn't exist for very long, right? So you have to be very careful when you talk about what's unique about you to truly think about whether it is unique or not, because quite often people will put, you know, oh, we've got great customer care and we, you know, we really care about our customers. And frankly, everybody can say that. It might be different, it might not be so in practice, but people will all claim it. And that really doesn't make you unique, right? You've got to think, what is it exactly that makes me unique? Okay. So just to demonstrate that, this is a list of some of the features from a Ford Focus. Now, this is a very small subset of all of the features of the Ford. And if we look at it, you know, body colored door handles, that's certainly not unique about it, right? But buried in there is this quick, clear, heated windscreen. So that's a very specific thing that they've got a whole series of wires that are embedded in the windscreen that heat the windscreen up. And in no way do they distract you. So the heater in the back is some very thick wires that goes across the back of the windscreen and is quite clear. Whereas the quick clear heated windscreen, the wires are very, very thin, and if you look carefully, you can see them, but you can't actually see them. And that actually is something that is unique to Ford. They have the patent on it, and nobody else can use those windscreens. And that is actually something that's unique. Now, it might not be important to everybody. So people who don't have frost very often or whose windscreens don't get misted up, it's not going to make much of a difference to them. But for lots of people in the UK, that's going to be something that actually is quite important. But it's buried amongst this huge, big, long list of things that, you know, are not actually unique about it, right? So yes, they're important that they've got them, but they're not differentiating themselves from anybody else as a result. The other critically important thing is that you've got to explain to people why it matters to them. So why is this thing that's unique important to you, right? So it just states quickly, here's the windscreen. I might not understand what that means. I might be able to guess what it is, but equally we've got a Ford Sync 3 with 8-inch FTF touchscreen and Apple Link Android, also Apple CarPlay, right? I understand what all those words are, but I'm not entirely sure that I understand what that is. So even though that might be unique, if I don't understand what it means, then it's not doing me any good. Okay. So we always have to ask the so what question, right? So what is always most important question in sales, right? If my customer doesn't understand what I'm talking about, if they don't understand why it matters to them, then it's not going to make a difference to them. Okay. So you've got to be able to explain why your uniqueness matters. So for example, the quick clear heated windscreen means that you can clear your windscreen and be on your way in less than a minute on foggy or frosty mornings. Now, having lived in the north of Scotland for a number of years, that's really important because you can spend 5 or 10 minutes cleaning your windscreen at times. Even living in the south of England, I watch an awful lot of people driving off with a very badly cleared windscreen, which is obviously extremely dangerous to drive, not being able to see properly out of your windscreen. So it does make an enormous difference, saves you a lot of time in those instances. And therefore, it's important that you explain. Okay, any questions, comments, thoughts at the end of all of that? Okay, I will